Good morning, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. Now, unlike other episodes of the show where we review something or it's going to have topics that are directly spoilable, this is mostly about the Bad Batch, and I was going to make it a 30-minute reviews episode. But while I was thinking about it, I was thinking about a conversation I had yesterday regarding the Star Wars Expanded Universe currently under Disney. And I think that a broader conversation about that could be interesting. But I don't want to, get stuck in the situation where I end up spoiling something for people who haven't watched, like Andor or Tales of the Jedi or anything like that's come out recently. So I figured I'd do it here. So, we're here to discuss, just in general, where do we go with the Star Wars Expanded Universe, specifically because I finished watching The Bad Batch finally. And I think The Bad Batch did a great job of juxtaposing kind of with The Mandalorian, like, the difference in what was going on between the takeover of the New Republic about 5 years after, and then what was going on with the, with the Empire, where they took over. Now the Empire is very ordered, very quick. We're going to create this thing. It's going to be like a social security number and all of that. And we're going to move on from there. And, meanwhile, there are currency debates in The Mandalorian. Do you take Mon Cal credits? Now we take, do you take Republic credits? Do you take Imperial credits? And it's this whole big issue. And I think part of the problem is the universe that happens between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens is nebulous for a lot of people. And I think that The Force Awakens and the sequels don't exactly help that. Because when you look at broadly how the First Order rises, and how, and how how the Empire falls and the First Order rises, it's one of those things where I don't think that, like when you get to the original plan for Episode 9, where the Duel of the Fates shows that there was supposed to be a final confrontation, like the war was going to go to Coruscant between the Resistance and the Rebellion and the First Order. It was going to go there, and Kylo Ren was Supreme Leader, and he was going to be who Rey had to face off with. And when you look at that, and then they throw that whole thing out and say, no, we're going to do something entirely different. Because the question is, what was going on with Coruscant? Did Coruscant ever fall? Because in the old EU, there was the fall of Coruscant, or the recapture of Coruscant, however you want to portray it. That happens in the X-Wing series with Wedge Antilles. They do retake Coruscant from the Empire. And they don't, I haven't read Bloodlines yet. And from what I've read online, Bloodlines fills in a lot of gaps. I think the problem is, though, it's filling in gaps in a way that they shouldn't have needed to fill in gaps. What I mean by that is, a lot of the issues that we run into with the First Order and with, all of that, I feel like if the First Order weren't the bad guys and they weren't so closely tied to the Empire, then we wouldn't have had this issue. Because what you end up with is like, okay, so the Emperor turned Ben, but like through Snoke, and it's like, alright, so he made a clone of Snoke, and he made it, but like, when I looked into it, because again, still haven't read Bloodlines, maybe I'll read Bloodlines as my next book after I finish X-Wing, the first X-Wing book, but Bloodlines idea that they beat the Empire at Jakku, and this is from a collection of things. So, like in Alphabet Squadron, we hear about the Battle of Jakku and all of that, and what it seems like is, especially the third Alphabet Squadron book, is doing a lot of cutting puzzle pieces to fit into shape where they really don't. Because I feel like I'm rambling here, but there is a cohesive thought here, I promise. Battlefront 2 introduced Operation Cinder. And again, I'm introducing something else now. So Operation Cinder is this idea. I called it, when I first saw it, when I was playing Battlefront 2, Operation Fuck Me, No Fuck You. Which was, after the Emperor died, he would declare the Empire, failed. So what's he going to do? He's going to destroy everything. Now that doesn't quite gel with the idea that the Emperor was still alive, and he had clones of himself. So Alphabet Squadron, the third one, Victory's Price, needs to do a little bit of fitting that in. Where does that fit in a world where we now know the Emperor survived and the Emperor is going out to do that? Because Operation Cinder may not happen throughout the entirety of Alphabet Squadron, but in the beginning of Alphabet Squadron, you definitely have, we see that, the fuck was it? Yurka defects during Operation Cinder because she was carrying it out. And she doesn't defect because, she's not willing to do it. She defects because it's like, look, this is going to shit, And her commanding officer's like, you need to, go save yourself while this is happening. And I think part of the problem is that you have a lot of that, a lot of trying to fit things in where they don't belong, and so what Alphabet Squadron does is it reframes that Operation Cinder as part of the wider plot to reclaim the galaxy and tighten the grip on the galaxy. Because planets that were thought to be rebel sympathizers were part of the targets of Cinder. And then on top of that, it was also designed to spread the rebellion, or at that point, I guess we call them the New Republic, forces so thin that while all the Imperial important stuff was being relocated to Jakku, they would be able to fortify, get their troops in order, and then go and just wipe them all out pretty easily. Now that doesn't work because the Battle of Jakku, as we see in Aftermath and we see in Alphabet Squadron, doesn't go the way they were anticipating it to, and they end up losing. But the plan was for any important Imperial documents to be outsourced off-planet into the into the unknown regions. And I think that when I say that it is partially the fault of that other show, of The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens does come into this a little bit, because when we talk about Ahch-To and where Ahch-To is, and we look at like where they don't know where something is, and it's this map, and they fill in this missing piece of the map, and it's like a perfect puzzle piece, and it's like, gee, I wonder where Ahch-To is. Like, it's not like Kamino, which Kamino, like if they did the Kamino route in Attack of the Clones, that would have worked better, because it's just erasing one planet from the map and no one knows where the fuck it is. And that's a lot easier to be like, oh, well, there should be a planet here than that. Instead of being like, well, there's this whole region of space here in the middle of the fucking mid-rim that no one knows where it is or what's there. Like, come the fuck on. But unknown, the galaxy is kind of concentric circles. You have the core worlds, which are closest to the center, which is where you have like your Coruscants. Is Naboo mid-rim or is it core? All your important planets are really there. Then you have mid-rim, then you have outer rim, which we have like Mandalore, you have like Tatooine, you have all these other places that are on the outer rim. They're charted, and the and the Republic or the Empire know they exist, but they're the farthest out from the core. And then beyond that, you have unknown region. And the unknown region is not charted. That no one knows people don't know what's out there. they're not formally part of the Republic or the Empire. They're just there, doing their own thing. I want to say the ascendancy is in the unknown regions. Yeah, because they're not in wild space, because the wild space is even further out than the unknown regions. Wild space kind of looks like the quantum asteroid field from, from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but there are still planets out there. And that's where Exegol is, out in wild space. So, I feel like the key issue that we have here is what happened. Like, because that was a big misconception we were trying to figure out last night, was because there was an article that came out about how the guy who made Andor, Tony Gilroy, wanted to do a Mossad-style show about hunting down the remnants of the Empire, the Imperial War criminals. And I was like, if this guy's gonna do that fucking show, sign me the fuck up, because Andor is fantastic. I feel like the issue is the way that the world is laid out, for those who don't know, because it really is kind of like what I've said with Captain America, or with Falcon and Winter Soldier, where it's like, you know, one thing ends and then the next thing picks up, where it's like, we're going to see Captain America, we see Steve hand off the shield to Sam, and then in Captain America 4, Sam is Captain America. So the entirety of Falcon and Winter Soldier is about him coming to terms with being Captain America, but all of that's kind of just, you don't need to necessarily see it to understand what happened. You can just move on from there. And I think it's a similar issue with a lot of the expanded universe stuff, because for a lot of viewers, the First Order is just the Empire, and that's what a lot of the explanation has been, is that after Jakku was a failed, mission, whatever they could salvage from Jakku, the Imperials, they all fucked off into the unknown regions using, star charts supplied by Thrawn, who was working for the Empire, through the height of the Empire, and using the general, just, going out there because no one knows what's out there, and they're not likely to go out there. And any Imperial from the mid and outer rim who are not being, because here's the thing, is after the Battle of Jakku, it kind of forces the Empire into signing a peace treaty. And this peace treaty is the Star Wars equivalent of the Treaty of Versailles. So, what happens is, as the rebellion, now the New Republic, starts going out to these systems and relaying to them, guys, by the way, Empire is no longer in control. After that, as they're getting out there and as they get toward worlds that are further and further away from the core, they're finding more and more of these worlds deserted. And deserted, I don't mean the inhabitants, I mean the Empire has abandoned these worlds. They're abandoning their posts and they're just fucking off. And the important thing about that is, if I think it just shows a complete failure on the part of the Republic to stop the First Order from rising. Because what happens is they all fucked off to the unknown regions, and they're all out there just kind of chilling and setting up their thing and building up their armies and setting up all of that. And then they go from there, and then they declare war on the on the rebellion, or on the New Republic. And the New Republic is like, they're just a bunch of fanatics. They're fanboys, they're cosplayers. Just let them be. They'll tire themselves out. Like, we don't need to deal with this. We don't need to raise an army. Mon Mothma sees it as a threat and puts Leia in charge of what is now the Resistance, because the Republic does not want to get involved militarily in a conflict with the First Order to legitimize the First Order as something out there. So it's all kind of conflicting. Not conflicting, that's the wrong word. But it is kind of like, look at it like this. If I am, if I am designing if I'm designing a world in this way, it just kind of feels a little silly and a little, like, retrofitted to have everything kind of squeezed back in this way that doesn't quite feel right. And that's, I think, the biggest problem that the new EU has. I would be interested to see a Rise of the First Order TV show. I think that would be very useful. I think that, like, we have all of these other things that they're looking at, and it's all kind of hovering right around the time of the original trilogy. It's all hovering right around, Andor's 5 years before, the Battle of Yavin, Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett are 5 years after, Obi-Wan Kenobi is before that. I think it's like 10 years before, maybe 15 years before, the Battle of Yavin, and, looking at it that way and being like, okay, so here's all the things that are happening in Star Wars, and you look at it and you go, okay, but what about X, Y, and Z? I think the issue is you're not doing enough, I don't think, to really solidify the world post Return of the Jedi. If you're just going to hover right around where things kind of still look like the original trilogy for the aesthetic of it, and I understand why you do that, because you want to bank on nostalgia when you make new TV shows, and the books give you more leeway to go further. I feel like that's where they should really be expanding, because you can keep expanding the period between the Empire and between the Republic and the Empire, between the Republic falling and the rebellion taking over. I just feel like that's the. I'm not saying there's only so many stories to tell there, but what I am saying is you can sit here and tell all the stories you want there, and eventually it'll start to feel repetitive. You got to start moving out in different directions, and I think that the way they should go is the other trilogy era that they have, and start being like, well, what are the stories that are happening here? And some of the stories that they've told in that time period are pretty interesting. Shadows of the Sith was not terrible, and that's the book about Luke and Lando going out after Janna gets kidnapped, because Janna is Lando's daughter, even though that is a little weird scene at the end of at the end of Rise of Skywalker, where it's like, where are you from? Let's find out. And it's like, is he gonna fuck this girl? But it's like, no, it's meant to be his daughter. And that's kind of what I want to see. I think the next movie that we're gonna get is gonna be Episode 10. I think we should resign ourselves to that, because I think that what's gonna end up happening is we're going to get Damien Lindelof's movie, and I think that the fact that Kathleen Kennedy, we have the reports of Damien Lindelof working on a Star Wars movie that's set after Episode 9, and earlier this year we had Kathleen Kennedy say in an interview with Vanity Fair that she had dinner with, or I think it was Daisy Ridley who said she had dinner with Kathleen Kennedy recently. I think that we're looking at an Episode 10 of Star Wars, or if not Episode 10 specifically, well, I think it would have to be. If it follows Rey, then it's Skywalker Saga, because it's Rey Skywalker, like it or not. So I think that's kind of an interesting approach that could be happening. But we'll wrap up there for today. So until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.